There's a moment in every Sigma male's life when something inside quietly shifts, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with clarity. He stops chasing, stops explaining, stops bending just to make others comfortable. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. He realizes that caring too much about opinions, outcomes, or validation was the weight keeping him from his full power. And the moment he starts caring less, the entire world around him begins to rearrange. People who once drained him start fading. The noise that once distracted him goes silent. He begins to operate from a level of calm that confuses everyone still stuck in the chaos he left behind. When a Sigma male stops caring the way he used to, it's not that he's grown cold. It's that he's learned to prioritize energy over approval. He's mastered the art of emotional detachment without losing his humanity. And that's when his influence becomes unstoppable, because nothing and no one can pull him out of his own alignment. This is the silent transformation most people never see and never recover from once they do. Stay until the end of this video, because you're about to understand why when a Sigma male stops caring, everything changes. His mindset, his power, and even how the world responds to him. Company. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments, have you ever reached a point where you just stopped caring and suddenly everything around you started falling into place? And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to UltraWise, where we decode the silent evolution of the Sigma mind. The emotional burnout that triggers detachment. There comes a moment in every Sigma male's life when his silence stops being a choice and becomes a necessity. It happens quietly, often after years of being the dependable one, the problem solver, the emotional anchor for people who never once asked if he was okay. He's spent so long being strong that nobody realizes strength has a breaking point. He listens, supports, absorbs, but every time he does, a small part of him fades, and one day, that invisible exhaustion turns into something irreversible. Emotional burnout. It doesn't happen after one betrayal or disappointment. It's the accumulation. The subtle disrespects, the half-truths, the constant expectation for him to carry others' chaos while staying composed. He begins to notice that every time he gives, he's left emptier. Every time he explains, he's misunderstood. Every time he shows care, someone mistakes it for weakness. That's when his internal switch flips. He doesn't announce it, doesn't lash out. He simply stops caring with the same intensity he once did. He withdraws, not to punish, but to protect. His emotions, once open currents, now move behind quiet walls. People around him start to feel it. The distance, the calmness that used to be warmth. They think he's cold, but he's not. He's just finally conserving the energy he once gave too freely. This detachment isn't bitterness, it's wisdom earned the hard way. He's no longer chasing approval or emotional reciprocity. The world may see it as apathy, but it's actually evolution. Because when a Sigma male reaches this stage, he realizes that peace costs less than people's drama, and that no connection is worth losing himself for. He stops showing up for every crisis, stops explaining his silence, stops needing to prove that he cares. The fewer things he gives emotional space to, the sharper his focus becomes, and that's when everything changes. His peace grows, his productivity spikes, and his power becomes magnetic. The emotional burnout that once broke him now becomes the force that remakes him. Replacing validation with vision. When a Sigma male finally stops caring what others think, something extraordinary happens. His vision sharpens. For years, he lived with the quiet pressure to prove himself, to friends, to colleagues, to the world that never fully understood him. Every success felt incomplete because it was built under someone else's expectations. But when that need for validation burns out, it leaves behind something far more powerful: clarity. He no longer needs to be seen to feel significant. His value is no longer tied to applause. His purpose becomes internal. The shift is almost spiritual. He begins to notice how much of his energy was spent trying to convince others of his worth. The compliments, the recognition, the approval, all of it was noise, distracting him from his deeper calling. Now, instead of chasing acknowledgement, he starts chasing alignment. Instead of wondering who believes in him, he starts believing in his own process. The opinions of others become background, static, present but irrelevant. This is where the Sigma's true transformation begins. His silence is no longer about retreat. It's focus. His solitude is no longer isolation. It's preparation. The same people who once questioned his detachment now notice his precision. Every move becomes intentional. Every goal becomes personal. He no longer measures progress by likes, praise, or validation. Only by the quiet satisfaction of becoming more efficient, more authentic, more complete. What others see as arrogance is actually peace. The Sigma male has stopped asking for permission to be himself. He's building something they can't yet understand, a life guided by inner vision, not external noise. He becomes the type of man who no longer reacts to pressure but redirects it. The same doubt that once fueled his anxiety now fuels his discipline. And in that silence, his vision begins to take form, a direction so strong it makes validation feel microscopic. He's no longer performing for the world, he's creating his own. And selective energy investment. For the Sigma male, energy isn't just about effort, it's currency. Every conversation, every emotion, every interaction costs something. And when he finally understands that not everyone deserves a share of his energy, his entire world changes. He used to pour himself into people, projects, and situations out of habit, believing that if he gave enough, the balance would eventually return. But experience has taught him the harsh truth. Most people only value energy when it runs out. This realization transforms him. He becomes deliberate, strategic. The once freely given empathy now has an entry fee: respect, reciprocity, and purpose. He stops chasing conversations that drain him and instead invests in silence that nourishes him. When others demand his time, he doesn't explain anymore. He simply calculates, will this feed me or deplete me? And that mental audit becomes his secret weapon. People start to notice the shift. The Sigma male's absence suddenly feels louder than his presence ever did. The same individuals who once took his consistency for granted now feel uneasy when he no longer reacts. His focus turns surgical. He gives his best to what builds him, not what bleeds him. His ambition, creativity, and clarity skyrocket, not because he gained new strength, but because he stopped wasting it. This selective energy isn't selfish, it's survival. He's learned that every misplaced ounce of attention weakens his vision. So he spends his energy where it multiplies, not where it disappears. The conversations become fewer but deeper, the circle smaller but stronger. Every move he makes now has weight, every silence has intention. And through this newfound precision, his life takes a different shape. One that reflects power without performance and peace without permission. The Sigma male no longer plays every game. He chooses the battlefield. Because when you learn where your energy truly belongs, you stop fighting for places that drain your soul. The power shift in relationships. When a Sigma male starts caring less, every relationship in his life begins to reveal its true foundation. The dynamics shift. Not because he becomes distant, but because his silence exposes what was real and what was performative. For years, he may have been the emotional anchor, the listener, the fixer, the one who maintained balance even when others created chaos. But once he pulls his energy back, people who were dependent on his constant reassurance begin to lose their sense of control. They don't miss him, they miss their access to him. That's where the power shift begins. The Sigma male stops chasing closure, approval, or even understanding. He lets actions speak for themselves, and in doing so, he becomes unreadable. His withdrawal doesn't create drama, it creates discomfort. Those who thrived on his predictability now stumble in the dark, realizing they never truly knew him. The calm, collected man they assumed would always be available suddenly becomes an enigma, and that mystery changes everything. He no longer explains his boundaries, his absence enforces them. He no longer overcompensates for others' shortcomings, his distance reveals them. This emotional shift forces people to confront their own dependency, their own lack of depth. Meanwhile, the Sigma begins to see relationships not as emotional obligations, but as exchanges of value, integrity, and respect. The ones who genuinely care will adapt. They'll match his energy, respect his solitude, and meet him halfway. But those who only benefited from his giving nature will fade, frustrated by his new emotional economy. And the Sigma doesn't mourn those exits. He studies them. Every departure confirms what his intuition already knew. In the end, the Sigma male doesn't seek dominance. He simply reclaims equilibrium. His power comes not from control, but from refusal. He no longer needs to win arguments or prove points. His silence does that for him. And as he refines his circle, he finally understands that peace isn't about who stays. It's about who no longer has access. The rise of emotional neutrality. At some point, the Sigma male realizes that his emotions, once his biggest strength, were also the easiest doorway for manipulation. People had learned how to trigger his empathy, provoke his reactions, or use guilt as a silent weapon. But as he matures, something within him shifts. He doesn't stop feeling. He simply stops feeding emotions that don't deserve his energy. That's when emotional neutrality begins to rise, not as apathy, but as mastery. This neutrality is not coldness, it's control. It's the art of staying calm in rooms designed to break you. The Sigma starts reading emotions like data, not orders. He can sense anger, guilt, or manipulation, yet he no longer feels the need to respond impulsively. He watches the storm without getting wet. His silence and chaos isn't weakness. It's dominance disguised as detachment. Because when you stop giving people predictable reactions, you take away their script. In this phase, arguments lose their power. Drama becomes boring. The validation of being right no longer feels like victory. What excites the Sigma now is inner peace, precision, and timing. He learns to move when it matters, not when provoked. And that restraint, so rare, so disciplined, gives him an aura that others can't quite define. It unsettles manipulators, confuses narcissists, and earns respect from those with substance. He no longer internalizes negativity. Someone's anger doesn't infect his calm. Someone's chaos doesn't disturb his focus. He becomes emotionally untouchable, not by closing his heart, but by mastering its temperature. Even in moments of betrayal or loss, he doesn't collapse, he recalibrates. Emotional neutrality becomes his superpower, his invisible armor in a world built on overreaction. People start to sense it, the subtle shift in his energy. He's present, but untouchable. Warm, but not absorbent. Connected, but never consumed. And in that stillness lies his power. The ability to observe everything and let nothing own him. Because the Sigma male doesn't fight every battle, he chooses them. And by staying emotionally neutral, he ensures that every move he makes isn't emotional. It's strategic. Detachment as the new discipline. For the Sigma male, detachment isn't escape, it's evolution. There comes a moment when he realizes that Caring too much about the wrong things has cost him more peace than any loss ever could. So he starts practicing a new kind of discipline. One that has nothing to do with muscles or money, but everything to do with emotional restraint. Detachment becomes his training ground, the mental gym where he builds strength without showing it. He no longer runs after people, explanations, or closure. He's learned that those who misunderstand his silence were never meant to understand his presence. Detachment for him means letting people reveal themselves without interference. It's observing, not absorbing. It's staying still when others expect chaos. While most chase approval, he now measures success by how little external noise can disturb his inner calm. Every situation that once provoked him becomes a test, and he passes by doing less, not more. Someone disrespects him? He withdraws attention. A manipulator tries to pull him into emotional games? He leaves them playing alone. This isn't arrogance, it's awareness. He understands that attention is energy, and energy is value, and when you control where your energy flows, you control everything. People mistake this detachment for indifference. But the truth is, the Sigma feels deeply. He's just learned to filter what deserves his depth. He doesn't need to prove love through overextension or loyalty through suffering. He's replaced emotional availability with emotional discernment, and that quiet filter terrifies those who once thrived on his compassion. With every day of discipline, his focus sharpens. His emotions no longer dictate his direction, his vision does. And that's what separates him from the rest. He's not cold, he's precise, not distant, just intentional. His detachment allows him to operate from logic when others drown in emotion. And that clarity gives him the kind of power no one can take away. In the end, detachment isn't about not caring. It's about caring correctly. The Sigma male doesn't cut ties to hurt others. He simply refuses to chain himself to what keeps him small. Because once you master detachment, the world no longer pulls you. You decide what's worth holding. The magnetic effect of indifference. When the Sigma male masters indifference, the world begins to react to him differently. What once made him invisible now makes him magnetic. He doesn't chase approval, argue for attention, or seek validation, yet people find themselves drawn to his energy. That calm, detached presence feels powerful in a way that's hard to explain. It's the paradox of quiet strength. The less he tries to be noticed, the more noticeable he becomes. Indifference for the Sigma isn't act of rebellion, it's emotional sovereignty. He no longer gives away reactions, and that lack of response becomes a mirror reflecting others' insecurities. Those who once fed off his empathy now feel powerless. Their manipulation loses momentum because his silence doesn't give them fuel. Others, however, feel strangely safe in his steadiness. His emotional neutrality creates a gravitational pull. People sense he can't be shaken easily, and that kind of control commands respect. The Sigma's indifference changes the game. He's no longer the emotional responder. He's the observer. While everyone else fights to be seen or heard, he's already 5 steps ahead, calculating, analyzing, and conserving energy. The power dynamic reverses. Suddenly, those who once underestimated him start seeking his approval. His disinterest becomes their obsession. His absence feels louder than their presence. But this indifference isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. It comes from knowing the difference between emotional availability and emotional vulnerability. The Sigma can care deeply, but only for what aligns with his integrity. Everything else, he lets drift away naturally. He doesn't block people out of anger. He simply stops making space for what drains him. And that's the real magic. His indifference isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. People can sense it. They realize they can't manipulate, rush, or guilt him into engagement. His peace is unbothered, his focus unshakable. And that restraint, that quiet refusal to participate in noise, becomes the loudest statement of all. In a world desperate for attention, the Sigma's indifference stands out as power. It's not that he doesn't care, it's that he finally cares only about what matters. And when you reach that level of emotional discipline, you don't chase energy, you attract everything meant for you. Peace as the new definition of power. For the Sigma male, peace is no longer the absence of conflict. It's the mastery of self in the middle of it. After years of carrying silent wars within, after countless battles to prove, explain, or defend, he discovers that true power isn't loud, it's calm. It's the quiet confidence that comes from not needing to win every argument, not needing to fix every relationship, and not needing to justify who he's become. Peace, for him, is the ultimate rebellion against a world addicted to chaos. The shift doesn't happen overnight. It comes after exhaustion, after heartbreak, after realizing that emotional overextension only breeds emptiness. The Sigma learns that peace isn't passive, it's active discipline. It's waking up and choosing stillness when everything around him demands a reaction. It's letting others misunderstand him, knowing that clarity doesn't need to be defended. In that stillness, his strength becomes sharper, quieter, and infinitely more effective. Peace gives him control over the one thing the world constantly tries to steal: his attention. Once he guards that, he becomes untouchable. Manipulation loses its power because he no longer needs to engage. Drama becomes invisible because he refuses to feed it. Even success feels different. It's no longer about proving worth, but about preserving alignment. Every decision is filtered through one question: will this cost me my peace? If the answer is yes, he walks away without hesitation. People begin to notice it. The calm authority in his silence, the steadiness in his energy. They mistake it for mystery, but it's just clarity. He's not trying to be better than anyone, he's just done being disturbed by what's beneath him. His peace becomes magnetic, his composure intimidating. Because nothing is more powerful than a man who can stay grounded while the world spins in panic. In the end, the Sigma male's greatest flex isn't dominance or control. It's serenity. Peace is the reward of his evolution, the proof that he's no longer fighting for attention, love, or validation. He's already won the only war that mattered, the one within himself. Because when a Sigma male finally finds peace, he doesn't just survive the noise. He becomes the silence that commands it. At some point, the Sigma male learns that peace isn't something you find, it's something you build. It's forged in silence, protected by boundaries, and powered by purpose. When he stops letting the world dictate his emotions, he starts shaping his reality. That's when his presence shifts, calm but commanding, quiet but undeniable. If you've ever felt yourself stepping into that same phase, where your peace matters more than your popularity, you're already evolving into who you were meant to be. The world may not understand it yet, but your calm is your power, and your silence is your proof. If this message resonated with you, don't just scroll away. Subscribe to UltraWise, because here we decode the psychology of strength, strategy, and emotional mastery. And tell me in the comments, what's one thing you stopped caring about that brought you peace? Your story might inspire someone who's still fighting battles that you've already outgrown.